Are gay men too superficial? Hey guys, Michael Pizzulo here. I'm a psychotherapist here in West Hollywood. So, a lot of people complain that gay men are too superficial, especially in this day and age of apps and social media that, we're bombarded with these headless torsos, shirtless pictures, guys that just seem to effortlessly, have no body fat and perfect faces and so on and so forth. And all that is true. But I want to offer to you why I think that this conversation about gay men being too superficial is incorrect. So, just to give some context, for as long as human beings have existed, we have been driven by aesthetics, right? Attraction is based off of a myriad of factors: emotional connection, personality clicks, situation, but also how people look. And this has nothing to do with being gay or straight, it's just how human beings are. And sure, different cultures, different times in our history, there have been certain aesthetics that seem to have been celebrated more than others. I guess generally speaking, being physically fit is often more desirable. But anyway, my point is that human beings are driven by aesthetics in general, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And particularly, I think that men, again, gay and straight men, are very visually driven when it comes to sex and what turns us on in our arousal templates. And what's interesting is that, straight men have been taught their whole lives to celebrate their natural interests and all the women they find beautiful, and, to talk about it and gloat about it, and which is all great. For gay men, it's obviously a different story, and it's something that we're catching up on. But you'll notice I never hear straight men say, "Oh, I'm too superficial," but gay men do a lot. And I think that may be some sort of internalized homophobia that comes into the picture, that we're doing something wrong by acting on our natural attractions and sexual desires. When really, I think it may just have more to do with men being more, visually turned on than maybe women are, for example. So I just want to give the context there that I don't think this is a gay man's issue. Maybe it's a man thing or a man issue, but I don't really know if it's an issue in general. It may just be human nature. And we all know that it goes beyond that. Obviously, if you're going to have a long-term relationship with someone, how they look is not going to suffice. You're going to have to like their personality if you're going to spend time with them. But sure, when it comes down to just the pure initial attraction, especially when it comes to wanting to be sexual with them, that the visual may dominate, what turns you on. And that, I think that may be okay. With that being said, can it go too far? Of course. If you put too much of your investment in choosing people just based on how they look, or also valuing yourself just on only how you look, then yeah, I think you're setting yourself up for fail, because looks change over time. They're not static. And also too, it's like, it's almost like a stock portfolio too. If you want to invest in different areas of yourself, and if you put all your eggs in one basket of just my value comes from how I look, then you're really putting everything there. So if anything changes in terms of how you look, then you're going to find yourself feeling quite anxious and nervous and just concerned about your value in general, if all of it is based off of aesthetics. But really, I would just encourage gay men to think about that being superficial and being visually driven in terms of what is attractive to you isn't a bad thing. I don't think we should be shaming each other for it. And I also don't think that we should be policing each other in terms of what we should or shouldn't be attracted to, because that, I don't know, to me that kind of goes back into thinking along the lines of, if we're going to do that, then it opens up the argument that we should just be straight. If we can train ourselves to be attracted to things that we're not, then I think that goes into a realm that's really homophobic and really antithetical to the sexual liberation that we're looking for in the first place. So curious to hear what you guys have to say, and if you think this is reasonable, if you think that gay men are too hard on each other about this topic, or if you do think that we have gone too image focused in terms of our culture. I will say that in terms of body standards, I do think that gay men have a much higher standard than straight men do in terms of what's attractive. And I think that's probably a different topic. But just in terms of being excited or turned on or drawn towards things that are visually appealing to you, I just think that in and of itself is not a problem and something that we should allow ourselves to do. I mean, that's the freedom that we fought for, at least in my mind. So curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments.